Hi, and welcome to the OT is In, the podcast where we merge the worlds of education and occupational therapy to empower families like yours. I'm Sarah Collins, your host, an occupational therapist and a homeschooling parent. I've experienced occupational therapy by supporting families for over 15 years, but also through seeking out support of my own children, so I'm right here in the trenches with you. Though there is not one way to educate your child, there is a lot to consider when individualizing an education. And the goal of this podcast is to explain some of the why behind what an occupational therapist is thinking so you can apply it to your own family. Especially with my three favorite topics: executive functioning, handwriting, and sensory processing. Each episode will be packed with practical tips, expert interviews, and real-life stories aimed at helping you to create a supportive learning environment for your child. So, grab your headphones and get ready to dive in of the collision of education and occupational therapy. I'm Sarah Collins from Homeschool OT, and I'm thrilled to have you with me on this journey of discovery. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the OT is In podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Collins, and today in episode 4, we're diving deep into the dynamic world of communities and relationships. Joining me as an interview for the first time on this podcast, I am hosting two powerhouses of the homeschool community, Colleen Kessler of Raising Lifelong Learners and Christy Faith of the Thrive community and, well, Christy Faith. Colleen starts us off. She opens up about the shifting landscape of finding the right community support for her children, underlining how individual needs evolve over time. Addressing the transient nature of human connections, we also explore the concept that people are meant to be in our lives for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. We'll also be discussing the vitality of learning driven by intense interest, which in the OT world, we're now referring to as learning until saturation, and the significance of such a model in nurturing a child's curiosity within their community. Backing our conversation with some studies, including Robert Dunbar's anthropological model of community, we discover a model that suggests we need 1 to 5 people in close relationship, but that a staggering 29% of people report an absence of community support. Christy Faith details the challenge and perhaps the adventure of putting oneself out there, embracing rejection on the path to finding your people. So from starting a community for homeschooling mothers to the intricacies of leaving a church, Christy navigates us through her journey and through the importance of fostering friendships that resonate with our values. We also delve into the hurdles of homeschooling as a working mom, the illusory quest for balance, and the overriding importance of prioritizing what is crucial in the now. We wrap things up by considering how social dynamics adapt to our technology-centric world, addressing the nuances of social connections and fostering meaningful relationships offline. Christy finally wraps us up with a heartening discussion about the invaluable nature of support networks for homeschooling parents and the strides each of our teams are making to offer robust resources and guidance through the OT is In community, the Raising Lifelong Learners community, and the Thrive community. So join us as we explore these themes and more in this enriching episode of the OT is In podcast. Before we continue, I want to tell you a little bit about the OT is In community. We understand that every child is unique. Your environment is unique, and what you need and want to do during the day is also unique. That's why it's so amazing to be able to individualize education. But we also know that this individualization isn't easy. So our membership offers personalized support through quarterly consultations with me, Sarah Collins, and weekly group office hours and a private forum. After all, no one understands homeschooling more than other homeschool parents. We share ideas together and we wrestle through tough topics. As a member, you also gain access to our exclusive resource library filled with printables and webinars, and dive into enriching discussions with our monthly book club. So unlock the tools and support that you need for your homeschooling journey. Visit homeschoolot.com/join-the-membership. Now, back to the show. Hey, so here we are with two of my very, very, very favorite other people here in the homeschool world. We've got Colleen Kessler and Christy Faith. We're going to talk a lot about community today. And what does that mean? What's that definition? You guys are going to hear from both of them on what's in their books that's related to community. But we also know right now, here in February of 2024, it is the time of year that we are all considering, well, what do we do next year? What's going well this year? What's not? What are we going to do next year? It's also, interestingly, a time right now where we are talking a lot about community within the greater world. I have I'm pointing because right across the street from me is a public school. They just put out a course all on the loneliest generation and how do we help our children to be related to each other, to be able to communicate and be in community. There's a church sermon series right by my house also where they're talking about community. So obviously this matters now for homeschoolers, but also for our greater world and the generation here. So let's kind of talk a little bit first about how would you guys define community and what do you do within your homeschools to make sure that your kids have community?
Who wants to go first?
I know.
I can go first.
Okay.
Hello, thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here with two of my also favorite people. I think that something really important to understand about community, and I think we are somewhat indoctrinated by going through a school system ourselves, most of us and those listening have, is that a group of people, whether it is at a school or even at a church or even in a Facebook group, a collection of people does not necessarily mean that there is community there. And
truth.
I have been in a lot of empty places. I have been in communities where you can't see the air quotes, maybe you can't. I have been in communities where I have felt extremely lonely, that I did not feel known. And so I think that when we have this discussion about community, and a lot of people like to point fingers, like it's social media and everything is fake. It's not, I have found some of the closest friends that I have over social media that we did take it off social media, but that's how those relationships were formed. And so I think that for me, as I ponder what community is, I think that ultimately we have to ask ourselves, do I or do my kids have a place where they feel like they belong? And Brene Brown talks about this with her research on vulnerability, shame, and belonging. And that is when we truly feel like we are part of something. Of course, there's other components too. Does this particular thing have a greater purpose, right? We all want purpose-driven lives as well. But that's a big thing for me that has been hard to find. I have been in extremely toxic churches, communities, small groups, and homeschool co-ops. So finding a place that is a healthy environment for our whole family, I got to be honest, it's been a challenge for us.
Yeah. What about for you, Colleen?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I was having a conversation yesterday. In fact, we were at an intro to archery class that was
we also were at an intro to archery class yesterday in Pennsylvania.
It was so fun. It was free through our local county park system, and I guess they do games, archery games, and a mini archery, like a fun tournament or whatever. And once you do this intro class, you can join in those programs. But we were there yesterday. It was their family program during the day for homeschoolers, and I, being the on top of things, sarcastically, the slacker that I am, didn't find out about it till it was super late and there were only 2 spots left. So I just signed 2 of the kids up and we went and whatever. But we were there and I was having this, I met somebody, a mom, and we were talking about high school and things. She's got a budding high schooler. And the conversation really was validating because it echoed what I have been feeling about community over the last couple of years. We had a really strong homeschool community when my kids were younger, primarily because I was a new homeschool mom. I was actively seeking it out. I had kids of various ages, and typically when you're looking for a group, you tend to kind of look at your oldest kid down because you could pull the littler kids along with you. And usually, your older kid is the one that you're trying to find friends for. And so that's kind of how we were when, way back, we've been doing this now. This is our 15th year of homeschooling. And so we had, a great group that we had found. We tried a couple different groups, like Christy said, that some were toxic, some were interesting. And I do actually talk about a group in the book that we left for various reasons. And we had found our space, and there was opportunity for the younger kids to grow friendships, but the older kids had very solid friendships. And then the pandemic hit and everything shut down.
Right.
And right before that pandemic started and everything shut, because of it, we had moved, and we'd moved about an hour away from where we were at the time, because homeschoolers travel.
Right.
We were commuting to our group of friends because it was worth it for us. And then the idea was that we'd find a couple other local groups, and we'd then stop going to that community, that group, that co-op, and stay friends with our friends, but, find somewhere closer that we could see each other, on a more regular basis. But that opportunity was pulled from us because everything was closed. And as groups started opening back up, most of them opened only to people who had been a part of the group before the pandemic, because they knew them and were comfortable with them. And here we were, like, in between. And having done it for so long, you go through different seasons in your homeschool life. And there was a time when it was no big deal for me to create a science of slime class and teach it to the enrichment co-op that I was a part of. But I'm much older now, and I have older kids whom I'm driving around all sorts of places and doing a lot of waiting. And my younger kids are older. My youngest is 11, and I don't want to create, all the classes that I used to create, because I don't have the time to stay up till 2:00 in the morning, pulling my materials together and getting everybody going in the morning.
Right.
I'd rather have somewhere I could drop them off and they could find their group of friends. And so needs change throughout the years. And I find that starts to affect what types of groups and programs and communities you can be a part of at all, or what's available in your area. And so personally, our community has changed. And in some ways, like I was talking with this mom who has also, older kids, the groups that are accepting new members tend to trend younger so that their kids can find connections to grow with. And my older kids have their solid friendships. And so, but because they have their solid friendships and I'm still driving them all these places, I don't have time to go to something that's a whole day away for just one of them.
Right.
And so needs start to change. And so I think that finding, as first of all, figuring out what season you're in. Are you at a place where your whole family's going to go to a group, and then maybe look into co-ops or things like that? And I know Christy's got some good information about co-ops. I'm not going to another co-op ever again. I'm just not. Our season has left our family's needs.
Right.
But it's certainly something to consider. We're more looking to find our kids things so they can grow within those things. And that's where I would say your older kids are going to find their people, and that you may find yours, in that. That conversation I had with that mom yesterday was great. And we've already talked about getting together in the pockets of time we have between our older kids, so our younger kids can play on the playground and we could talk, because we felt a connection. And having one or two people to connect with in person is great, because like Christy said, I've got some really great friends online that I can talk to every day about those big things. And then now my goal and my focus is turning to find those things where my other kids will thrive. My daughter has a robust community through theater and through her longtime friendships. And then my younger daughter is kind of finding her place. And now it's like, I need to find something for my 11-year-old to connect with. So know that your community needs are going to change. And that's okay. I used to tell my kids, because somebody told it to me years ago, people are in your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And, you have those people that come into your life very briefly, and they're there kind of to teach you something or to help move you to transition to a new place, or they're there for a season. And it's okay to step back from those friendships for a while. You might get back to them, you might not. And then you've got those couple that are going to be in there forever. My daughter's best friend, who she's going to celebrate her birthday tonight. They've been best friends since they were 8. They're in totally different schooling situations.
Right.
But they still have that connection, and they're going to be lifetime friends. So it's okay to know that not every community, not every group, not every friendship is going to be a lifelong one for you or your kids. And it's fine.
Yeah, I love that. You mentioned three different things actually that I was like, ooh, I want to dig in more on that. No, I love that. With, the two of you together. The first one that you guys talked about was like your interest or your situation and following a lead there. And I've read very recently, especially looking into autistic environments, right? And what helps the autistic community. And this work was by Learn, Play, Thrive. And she talks a lot about learning till saturation and following interests there. So that if you're going towards saturation, right, is the word that's used there, but that you're really digging in on something that your child is interested in until they're not, right? Until they're saturated and they're ready to move on to something else, which might mean that your community is perfect for that amount of time, but then it's not as we keep going. The other thing that you really mentioned is like the number of people that you need to have within a community. So if I look back, so Robert Dunbar, he actually was an anthropologist back in the 1980s and has written so much work about community and what that means. He started off looking at primates, at monkeys, and then began researching all about people, clearly. That's where he moved for. And he wrote a model it's called the 5, 15, 50, 150 model. So he talks about how at the bottom, is just the people that you recognize. And that theoretically should be about 150 people. And then we're going, 1,500 people. I'm wrong. 1,500 people just that you can recognize here or there. Now, again, this is before internet. So would that be different now? I'm sure. But then 150, which are your active people. These are people that you see one time a year that are in your, your network of, like, I send you a Christmas card. I know you, cool, but can have a good conversation, but not that you're seeing all the time. Then your 50 people, which is your useful connections where you can ask for help, but not necessarily your really emotional support group, right? Then 15, he calls this your sympathy group. So these are the people that you really go to for help, for sympathy. They might have a critical role. Like if something happens, they can be there they're on your meal train, right? But that's those people. And then your support clique, or the people that you're really close to, and that's like 1 to 5. But I will tell you, and this was also referenced in that course that I was telling you that the public school put out. Now, their research said, and they didn't cite their source, so take this with what you will, but they said that 29% of people say 0 that they have in their support clique. Zero people to really provide support there. So, like, what do we do? How do we help our kids to find that? But here's also a thing that I think is important for homeschoolers is that it's oftentimes, like you were saying, Colleen, yeah, we're looking for like maybe one of our kids, but we also are more likely to go in a pack, right? Like when I have to be taking somebody somewhere in the middle of the day, yes, my kids all have separate interests and hockey teams and sports teams or whatever. But like if we are looking for a homeschool co-op, I'm looking for somebody that's going to work for us all. So if you're working as a pack and somebody's not interested, like, what do we do? How does that change with the community?
Yeah. What do you say, Christy?
Oh, well, first I was struck with an incredible amount of sadness to hear that many people feel
Right?
like they don't have anybody
Yeah.
to go to. I think that, and for what it's worth, something that I always go back to, because I've had, you have times where you move and you're having to meet new people or whatever. And I've just always told myself, for what it's worth, be the friend that I would want to have. And that means it means when you're new in a place or maybe you feel like you don't have anybody, it means casting a wide net and being willing to accept some rejection. And it's not personal. It's not personal at all. But we have to in order to find our people, like Colleen, you were, and actually you too, when I first entered this new space, which it kind of happened overnight, and I was all of a sudden thrust into, okay, now I am this thought leader in the homeschool world. I was a thought leader in my own head before, but
now I'm a public thought leader.
Yeah, but I had to put myself out there to meet as many people as possible. I actually remember being at a conference and I slipped notes to 4 different speakers there saying, hey, I'm Christy. I'm new. I don't know anybody. And that's actually
Ew.
how I didn't slip a note to Colleen, but that's kind of how we got to know each other. And then we just had this incredible connection. And then, it was Marnie Love that connected me to you, Sarah. And so, but there's been a lot of people along the way that's just I'm either not their cup of tea or they're not my cup of tea. There's no hard feelings. There's nothing against that. But we have to cast a wide net and be willing to let things not click. I think that we're scared of that. We're scared of that, right? So like, I can come on really strong because I like to talk about ideas. Not everyone in the world likes to talk about ideas like I do. Like, you know what I mean? They want to talk about the weather and where they went to their cabin the last weekend. And I want to unpack like how, the feelings of homeschooling through loss, like these intense things.
My husband and I, we call that backsplash talk because I don't have time to find out who's replaced their backsplash lately and what it looks like. It's not my jam, but I also recognize there is a space for that, right?
Yeah. But I think that putting yourself out there to, so I remember one time we were at church and I was kind of feeling like I didn't really know people. So the first thing that I did is I volunteered, and I volunteered at like a Wednesday night kids program. Not working with the kids. I was working with the teens. Teens are kids, but not the little ones. And there was a couple people there that I was interested in. I thought they were really cool people, but they were just kind of standoffish. And I just decided, I got bold. And I decided one day, I said, rather than me thinking that they don't like me, I'm actually going to find out for sure, because I think it's not fair to me if you just decide you don't like me when you actually don't know me.
Know me. Look at
so you need to know me before you decide you don't like me. And so I just kind of like, hey, I'd love to get to know you more, right? And so did those end up being deeper relationships? They didn't, but there wasn't any hard feelings either.
Right.
But I think that we are very quick to, and it could be trauma responses, I don't know. But we are very quick to make assumptions about what other people might think.
Yes.
And people are really self-consumed. They're busy. Yeah. Like you might think someone is standoffish and really they're just like, their kid was up with a fever last night and they have no applesauce or ginger ale. And they're like worried, when am I going to get to the store? But we read a face like they're somehow rejecting us.
Yeah.
That's not, they've done studies on this, you really should not take anything personally, because it usually is not. And so,
right. Like perception versus fact. Yeah.
Yes. And it's a very dangerous place for us to go. And I don't know anybody listening right now who's an overthinker.
Feel called out.
I mean, I just think that, and then when there's that component where casting that wide net, being proactive, right? Like my mom, she lives in Denver now. And it's really hard when you're older, because a lot of people her age already have their set group of friends.
Right.
She moved here only a couple of years ago. And, she went to this grandparents event. She's joining a knit group. She's a very accomplished knitter.
Yeah.
She's joining a knitting group. Just being proactive. Are her best friends going to be at the knitting group? We don't know. There might be one. But if you don't put yourself, and last year, I got to tell you, I tried to go to a mom's group at my church. I tried. I was consistent every week. It didn't land. I'm moving on. And there's no hard feelings, but I think we have to be somewhat aggressive with, okay, I'm feeling lonely here. I'm not feeling like I belong anywhere. What responsibility can I take? And it might be a little rough. There might be moments where we might feel a little rejected or something else. And that's okay. But that's kind of the only way, I feel like. What do you think, Colleen?
Well, I'm thinking as an introvert listening to you, like I want to crawl into under a rock and die a little bit, because
I'm an introvert, right?
You do not project like that, and I can't.
Everyone tells me that I am such a strong INFJ.
So funny, because I can present as an extroverted kind of introvert when I'm doing something like this, or I'm at a speaking event and talking about something about which I'm passionate. But when I'm like Trevor's mom or Logan's mom or Isaac's mom, and I'm going to like archery thing, usually I'm sitting back. In fact, it was that conversation I had that was great and is going to lead to, some play dates probably. She came up to me because she noticed that Logan was tall and older and wanted to know how old she was, because she's got a 14-year-old at home who was watching the younger two, while the 10 and 12-year-old came to this archery thing and is scared about high school next year, and was like, is your daughter in high school, or are you thinking about high school? And I probably wouldn't have had the courage to do that. But so I think that, like, on the flip side of what Christy's saying, you also have to be receptive to those kinds of, like, be open to, if somebody talks to me, I'm going to talk back, and I'm going to try to cultivate that, if especially if you're looking for, connections for yourself. I will also say that, there's kind of two different facets, right, to this idea of community. You're looking for community for your children, which is different than community for you. Though homeschoolers oftentimes throw it back together, or throw it all together, because we're with our kids in a different way than public schooled or private schooled kids are. And so sometimes you have to be okay separating that out. Like, I don't necessarily go to the archery class or something else to find a friend. That was an unexpected bonus yesterday, but I am looking to see if there are relationships or things I can cultivate for my kids. I used to, especially when Molly was much younger and I would take her to, a community theater show, I would be in the lobby. Rehearsals are closed, but she's my minor child in a show with mostly adults. I would be in the lobby, and every break they would see me, Molly's mom, as they walked by. So I could make sure that I was an adult presence there, but I wasn't going for the purpose of connecting with those people. I was going so Molly could connect with theater people and do what she loves. And so sometimes it's okay for you to find community that's just going to be for your kids. And sometimes it's okay if you're looking for, a group for yourself, like your mom's knitting. And then sometimes none of those things are going to work out, and you have to be okay stepping back, but be receptive in case an unexpected conversation happens. And then be okay if, like, your kids click, but it's not somebody that, you click with, because as your kids so when your kids are much younger, especially for homeschoolers, you're all going to play dates and get together with families as a family. Like, I remember when we'd have Molly's best friend, who's still her best friend, when we'd have the Bozans over, they all came, all four kids.
Everybody.
Connected. And we had these big, it was great. It was like the pack. Well, my oldest was much older than their oldest, but they played when they were younger, and then they moved on, and Molly and Ella stayed. And then Logan and the one that she was partnered with, right, moved on to other interests, very different interests. And so they're not still friends. And the younger two still get along quite a bit. But if we were to get together with them, Aaron and I would get together, and Molly and Ella would get together, and Isaac and Griffin would get together. And that's okay. Like, you, again, with those seasons, things change, and you're not going to always have, like, the whole family group. When your kids are young, there's a huge value in that.
Yeah.
And as they grow, it starts to split, and you might feel badly about that. And here's what I would say to that. It is okay to mourn, like, those changing seasons. It's okay to feel sad that the connection that you had, whether it's gone because you moved, or because your kids have kind of split, or the co-op doesn't exist in the same way, or the feel has just changed and your kids' interests have moved on. It's okay to mourn that things are different.
Right.
And then, as long as you don't fester in that,
and stay on that
place, right, and ruminate on the fact that everything's so different than it once was, and it was so much better to homeschool then, and I got to be, like, I was much more fun a mom, or whatever, and we had so many friends. More than that, like, I'm sad that my 11-year-old doesn't have the same homeschooling experience that my older two did, but it's okay. His will be different, but his whole upbringing would have been different by just the nature of being the youngest of 4 strong personalities. And so, and I'm a better mom than I was 11 years ago, and so it's going to change. It's going to be different. And each group might serve a different purpose. And then that's okay. Gosh, there was something else that Christy said that I wanted to talk about, and I don't remember now. I might interrupt you if it comes back, because it stuck out to me. But, you know what I remember? Because it was what both of you said about people having, like, fewer connections or the zero, and like, what do we do about it? Sarah, you had posed that question, and then Christy expressed her sadness about it. And I think that we're in this huge cultural transition because of events that have happened over the last several years, and the way that, politics and educational choice and other things, big things, have become polarizing. And so that's just by its nature going to change the dynamics. But we've also become a more plugged in world, and we can step back from that and unplug ourselves and our kids and get more in real life connections and build in real life community for our kids. But we also can't divorce ourselves from that completely, because the reality is our kids have to be able to navigate that
right
in a safe and an emotionally intelligent way, so that they go on and see that, okay, remember that their friends are only posting the best, or they're not seeing the whole picture.
How do you navigate through that?
Right. And so they feel on some level more connected now, but on another level more isolated, because they've got all of these like different touch points. We're navigating that right now with the whole like dating and how relationships form. When I was a kid, when I was a teen, people spread that you liked somebody, and then y'all went out as a group and connected.
Maybe you passed a check, yes or no note.
Right, probably. But more straightforward than it is now. When I talk to my teens about that, and even my young adult, you're talking to somebody for a long time, and is talking to dating? No, it's like snapping each other or DMing each other or
just
whatever.
Your forehead. Only snap your forehead.
or like this down with like a big nose and eyes. And so there's that. And then does it evolve to you guys getting together? And is that dating, or no, we're just hanging out? Like what?
Right.
So they don't even know, because the relation rules. I mean, I don't know if you've heard, I follow a lot of social media because I want to make sure that I'm a step ahead of my teens, especially, and know what the lingo is. But like, they're talking about situationships now instead of relation.
Yeah.
And, how do you help your kids navigate something that's so ambiguous that used to be a straightforward? We are friends. We feel more interest towards one another. We want a bigger connection. We want a deeper connection. Of course they feel like they have zero.
Right.
Because
it's confusing.
Yes, it's confusing, and it's set up for their failure in that situation.
It totally
and so
is.
We need to be aware of that, and we need to help them be aware that actually sometimes you might have more close people than you really think you do. And here's how you can cultivate that in a way that's safe and healthy. And also that while it looks like everybody has these big groups of people, they also feel alone. And you may see like everybody went out on a Friday night and you were at home. But then when you talk to your good friend in that mix of the big group, they felt alone and wished they had been home and not out with that, but they had to get some pictures for Instagram or Snapchat. And so I think that there is this need for community, and there's really a need for helping our kids understand what real community is.
Right.
And that when they leave us, when they go off to college, or they go off to start their own business, or they're, living with us till they're 27, like a friend of mine's daughter is, and I've got a 21-year-old, they're not the only ones living with their parents in their 20s, and they're not the only ones going off to college, and they need to navigate and find their one person there, or their two people there, and really connect with that. And go ahead and post what you want, but know that everybody else is posting exactly the same way you are. It doesn't mean anything to them either. And so if we can help them sift through the muck to get to their one person, that is worth its weight in gold, because you really only need one solid person you can go to, and then a couple others to branch out to there, to then go into your 1,500 that you see on social media or whatever.
Right.
Well, I'm hearing you talk, Colleen. You're just inspiring me to fall in love with homeschooling more than I already have. Because look at it, you guys. What other way to educate our children gives us the time
to talk about those things?
Let's do the fancy word, SEL learning, social emotional learning. This is basically what we're talking about. But we know now that the studies are in, and they just keep coming in, and they keep
Mm-hmm.
confirming the same things over and over again. And this is that soft skills, like we're looking at what makes people happy, what makes people fulfilled, like later in their life. And it's not, vocation training.
Right.
What our society thinks an education is not that. So why are we focused on that? And that's what's so amazing about what the homeschool revolution is doing right now, is we're saying that's not an education. This is
Mm-hmm.
the entire question it's the dangerous question I asked myself over a decade ago, almost 20 years ago now. What is an education? And when I actually asked myself that, it led to an entire deconstruction. We sold our business. We moved
And
states.
here we are, right?
Yeah, here we are as a homeschool family. But it's a worthy question, because don't we want better for our kids? Don't we want to launch kids who are happy? But not only that, they can spot some red flags.
Yeah.
I want my kids to know how to avoid a bad relationship and lean into a good one, whether it is with a romantic one or a friendship one.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I just, regarding this idea of like what a community is, I have made some mistakes in the past and have had to make adjustments. And I'm going to use a terrible example, but it will land, I think, because people will get it. We don't, as homeschool parents, when we're so into this life, and maybe we're in that phase where all of our kids are little. And so we want to join that co-op, and we want our friends, and we want our kids to have friends, and all of this. Be very careful that not all of your friends are your kids' friends' moms. You have to leverage, because things happen. We had to leave a church, and you know what? Overnight, my kids were never again invited to a birthday party. All of it ended literally overnight. We have had to deal with that with them and really help them through that. But one thing that I think is vital, it's one of the reasons why I started my community. My community is, I am all about the homeschool mother, that this is who I feed and nurture. And I really believe in us having friends that, we have that common, we all want to be the best homeschool moms, and we all are people who want to grow inside. But things happen. Friends get in fights. There's cliques. There's this. Maybe you have to leave a community. You don't want to be left with nobody. You have to leverage. And so it's smart to just make attempts. It doesn't have to look perfect. Mine didn't look perfect. But when we did have to leave that church, I would say we were over leveraged there, to be honest. Luckily I did have friends outside, but I also reached out to my old friends. Like I had made sure to cultivate and keep some of those really beautiful friendships from college. Not a lot, one or two. I made sure to reach out to them, to people who were not at that church that I had made friends with here in Denver, and things like that. So that in that season of in-betweenness for me, I didn't totally go into this pit of literally having no friends. That's what happens to people who leave cults.
Yeah. Interesting.
You hear that,
right?
because their entire, and so we have to be so careful with that and make sure to leverage, because the thing is, as you hear all the time, like I know that a neighbor that moved away, she'll never hear this, but they were the two neighbors, the two girls played soccer, and like one was like a superstar, one wasn't, and then it got icky.
Yeah, it gets nasty,
They're
right?
next door neighbors. They're next door neighbors. It got icky, yucky, whatever. People ended up. That happens with kids. Kids can be mean to each other. And then parents may not handle it how you would handle it. Maybe you would work through and want your kid to make an apology, and that's what you would hope did happen, and that didn't happen. It can get really icky. So just taking care of yourself to make attempts that your entire world is not wrapped up in any one thing. And it doesn't have to be co-op. It can be any type. We can easily do that with any type of community that we're really into. And so I just think it's vital. And I think that it affected my kids more than me and Scott, because we did have friends outside the church. But at that time, I'm like you, Colleen, I don't think I can ever join a co-op again. Well, part of it is I'm a working mom, and a lot of co-ops will not welcome us.
They don't like that.
Like, what about the working mom? Because we can't teach classes.
Right.
So
Mhm.
how does a working mom find community who is homeschooling? We should
Yeah.
talk about that too, if you want to. I don't know.
Yeah.
You're
Well, I do want to say, I know a very interesting thing that you're talking about with leverage. And I think this a lot of times comes from, we grew up in school with all the,
Yes.
27 kids of the exact same age as us, that we think all of our friends need to be,
Yeah.
in the same age range and going through the same thing. Can I tell you right now, I am on a search for old lady who wants to pour into me. I went to a church breakfast the other day and my husband was laughing at me because all these people are, sitting at their tables, and I looked for the one with all of the other older people because
Yes.
there are so many women around me and I love it. And I'm so grateful, but they are in the same time frame of life. They're, I know them through hockey, or I know them through, school or what, or, homeschooling or whatever, but it's hard to get a perspective from someone who is wiser or has been through something when everyone's going through the same thing at the same time. So like, I'm going to come and join your mom's knitting club, and I'm going to find all these people, church or whatever, where we can really think about the older and the younger dynamic. And I will say that is one beautiful thing that also comes from homeschooling is that, when in our specific homeschool co-op that we go to right now, my daughter is the oldest and the youngest. I mean, they're 2 and 3, and they all go out on the playground at the same time. It doesn't matter their age. I don't care. But you see them interacting and playing in a way that, these age communities or interage play can happen where they're all learning from each other. So if we can take that and leverage it, right, for us as adults, what else can we continue to learn? But yeah, let's back up to that working mom thing. And I think we probably have to wrap up from there. But I'm thinking about the working homeschool mom. It is oftentimes hard to find the fit. Like, are you in the working mom community, right? Are you in the homeschool mom community? Are you in the working homeschool mom community? There's like very few, right? So, and I don't know about you guys, but I've actually been told like there's not a chance you're going to be able to do all this. And I'm like, okay. It was actually Colleen, it was you that told me one day, you were like, Sarah, you got to stop with this balance talk. You're not going to balance it all. And that's not actually what you should be looking for. You should be looking at what is important to juggle, what balls need to be in the air at that time, which ones are you holding in your hands that you're really paying attention to at that point in time, and how is that serving you and how are you serving other people? And I was like, okay, good talk, Colleen.
Colleen, that sounds brilliant. Can you share it with the rest of us, please?
Yeah. Well, so here's the thing. There's no such thing in balance in parenting anyway, right?
Yeah.
Because just when you think you have it all together, somebody throws up, or, like
someone
the
needs
roof,
a snack.
yeah, the roof caves in because there's a leak. And so as parents, we can always feel like we're failing because something always gets in the way of what our plans are. As homeschooling moms, we can always feel like we're failing because somebody woke up sick and we didn't get the lesson done, or we didn't get to the group that we were going to go to or whatever. And then as a working mom, we can always feel like we're failing because especially entrepreneurial working moms who are not doing, so like there's differences, right? When you've got to meet your quota because you're working at home for a company, like you have to get it done. And that means, you stay up late or whatever. But when you're, on the flip side of that, when you're working for yourself, there is literally always something that could be done or needs to be done.
Yep.
And so you're always not doing something. And so when you factor all of that in, or you factor just one of those things in, the truth of the matter is there is always something else you could be doing. There's always a should, there's always an I want to. And so when we stop thinking about, I have to balance my life so I can get all the things done, to I need to figure out what is the most important in this moment, or what is the most important this week? Because I like to think of it kind of like when, we would tell our doctor, our pediatrician, that our toddlers weren't eating, and they would say to us, okay, you need to measure a toddler's eating habits over a week, not a day, because no toddler eats normal food in a day. But as long as they're getting a kind of relatively balanced meal or smorgasbord by the end of the week, they're going to live. And they're going to like grow in a developmentally appropriate way. It's the same thing with parenting and homeschooling and working. As long as it's evening out to some degree over the course of a week or a month or a season, you're going to be okay. But what you really need to notice is what is the most important thing.
Right.
What is the thing I can't break or burn down, or what is the thing that has to happen? For us, there have been seasons in the past where it was therapies. And for all of you who are listening, and I know that there are a lot of people listening to this conversation who have neurodivergent kids in some way, shape, or form. There is a season of your life, there's a time in your life where you are going from therapy to therapy to therapy. I have never homeschooled and not worked. So it's always been something that my kids have known. And so when we had seasons where there was therapy going on, my kids were like in the car with me and they were doing, watching a video or listening to a podcast or an audiobook. And then we were in the waiting room while one was going from therapy to therapy to therapy. And they were doing some work and I was doing some work. And then I was entertaining a toddler and plying him with snacks to keep him quiet. And then we'd go to the next thing. That season of life, I did less work than I do now, or I worked late and I slept in and we got a later start. You can't have everything perfect and even all the time, because nothing that we do as working moms, as homeschool moms, as parents looks the same. We're not raising widgets. We're not, putting out a robot. So things are going to change all the time. And it's about adaptability. It's about making sure the most critical things are the things you're preserving. And I will say that what I have learned now in 15 years of homeschooling and longer than that working from home and 21 years of parenting is that you should and can always default to the relationship first.
Yep.
Keeping the connection, building the relationship can always be your default, because you can always order takeout. You can always leave the dishes in the sink another night. You can always do 2 math lessons in a day and make up. You can always binge watch a YouTube series to catch you up on a topic you let go for a couple months because nobody in your family had the bandwidth to do history for a while. You can always make up the content or like the cleaning or the even cooking. I was just having another conversation for a podcast episode that's going to be coming out with a mom. And we were talking about homeschooling through crisis. And she's like, I put paper products on Amazon Subscribe and Save, and I bought out all the frozen family size meals. And that's what we did for months and months and months. My kids are still alive and they're thriving because we focused on connection during that time and just let everything else kind of slide in a way. So let go of the idea that there's ever going to be balance, because you're just setting yourself up for failure and you're going to set yourself up to beat yourself up. And know that it's always going to ebb and flow. So make sure you're focusing on the most important, and those are the people in front of you.
I love it, which is actually a perfect thing to end on. I think what we've talked about is, leveraging your community of people, of making sure we're interspersed. And here you are talking about like leveraging our time, but yet with our top priority being, that support click. Like we can be that support click, the 0 to 5 or 1 to, obviously not 0 to 5, 1 to 5 for our kids too, and that connection is coming first. So thank you, ladies, so much for being here again. Well, why don't you guys say where people can find you here quickly, and then we'll sign off.
Okay. And actually, Sarah, you need to say it too, because for those of you listening, this is going to be broadcast on all 3 of our podcasts because it's such a great conversation. So Sarah, where can everyone find you if they're not listening to this on your podcast?
You can find me at homeschoolot.com, also homeschoolot on Instagram, and here at the OT is in podcast, right? Because here we are. Also with the OT is in membership, which is where, we kind of wrestle through this especially with moms who have neurodivergent kids. So we really talk through how do we apply occupational therapy strategies to help our kids be able to be successful in what they specifically need and want to do.
Okay. And I'm Colleen Kessler. Raising Lifelong Learners has everything on it, but you can find my podcast there. You can find links to all show notes, social media. I'm either Colleen Kessler or Raising Lifelong Learners on all the platforms. And my community is called the Learners Lab, and it is a community for families who are creatively homeschooling their outside the box kids, whether they are gifted, twice exceptional, or neurodivergent in another way, or just their quirky creative selves and need something a little bit different. We focus heavily on social emotional learning and creativity, creative thinking, problem solving, that kind of stuff. And there are offerings in there actually for parents to be able to cultivate that in their kids as well as the kids. So there are classes and discussions and forums for both parents and kids.
Well, and before I say where people can find me, I just want to say how deeply in gratitude I am for both of your communities that serve when people pull their kids out of school, a lot of people do it because their kid has some sort of a diagnosis or special need, or maybe you've been homeschooling all along and you kind of know that if your kid was tested, they always find something, but you deep in your heart, the thing is there isn't a lot of support in the homeschooling space. And a lot of mamas have to do this blind, and they're in co-ops where maybe their kid might stand out for whatever reason. So your communities, I think, are vital for mamas, just to normalize, like laugh about the quirky thing your kid did that day. And also, I know Colleen, does yours have a kid component? Colleen's does, where those kids can meet together and find community and belonging with other kids who are wired similarly. Does yours have a kids component too?
It does not. I am gearing primarily towards mom and the education. There's tons of resources and references in there, and question and answer, book clubs, that type of thing, but it's all for moms and dads. I'm not discriminating here. Homeschooling parents, for sure.
Yes. Well, and in terms of my stuff, I'm Christy Faith. You can go to christyfaith.com. I'm Christy Faith on TikTok, Christy Faith Homeschool on Instagram. I'm on YouTube. My podcast is called The Christy Faith Show. That's a lot of Christy Faith.
So much Christy Faith. You can't get enough Christy Faith.
But and I have Thrive Homeschool Community, which is a lot different than what you guys offer. So I send my mamas to you guys all the time.
And we send them back.
But my heart is, a lot of moms maybe, and my community is not just for newer homeschool moms. I have moms who've been homeschooling over 10 years that feel like they are failing. They worry that they're messing up their kids. They don't know how to do this. They just need someone to look at what they're doing and say, am I doing enough? Am I doing too much? And so I have Thrive Homeschool Community. My heart is for moms to feel that sense of belonging. You truly feel like when you've entered Thrive that you have gotten a hug. Literally in our team meetings, we are going over mamas who are talking about moms who need love, who we're concerned about. And we have live office hours. We split you up in terms of the grade and age of your kids. So even if you have kids spanning high school on down to preschool, you can come to all 4 office hours because they'll apply. We have workshops every month. And the precious thing that is in there, besides the fact that we love you and care about your kids being prepared for life and all that means, is I have the 8-step homeschool success framework, and it is truly transformational. I get DMs every day. Moms go through it, then they pull their husbands to watch it with them. And that is really, the fancy word for what I'm doing in there is deschooling, but we need it. Even if you've been homeschooling 10 years, and if you haven't taken the time to rethink and ask yourself what an education is, you're not going to be able to give your kids what you want to give them if you don't even know what that is. So it's a very special place. It's where my heart and soul lives. It's why my email queue is 3 weeks behind. My hello email. Because I'm in there every single day answering those DMs.
I love it. Well, thank you again so much. And so you'll be able to hear this on 3 different channels, which is so fun. And hopefully we can all, come together even more. So thank you so much, ladies, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.